Hello. Hello, I am young penitent, and you're in my corner. Today, we are going to be addressing the calendar question. What is the calendar question? I'll explain. So, this time of year, around Christmas, people are always saying to me, they always come up after Western Christmas and they say, "How was your Christmas?" And then I have to explain to them that I have not celebrated Christmas yet because I celebrate Christmas on January 7th. And this is kind of annoying for me and it's confusing for the other people because they don't understand why I haven't celebrated Christmas yet. And I get tired of answering this question, so I decided it would be good to make a video to explain the whole issue of why I don't celebrate Christmas the same day as everybody else. And so that is what I'm going to be talking about today, the calendar question. There are certainly other questions out there that I could have addressed, but I don't think that this is the time or the place for that. So I think I'm going to go ahead and answer this one today. Now, I got to say that this is actually, I had never really looked into this too much before. I was kind of vaguely aware of this issue. My church being on the old calendar, and I know other churches are on the new calendar. I'm going to explain what all this means, but I hadn't really looked into it too deeply yet. I hadn't really done my research, my due diligence to really understand the issue. But now that I have looked into it, I'm glad that I did. I think it is a good thing for me to be informed about this, but at the same time, it is not an absolutely essential and necessary issue. It's not of primary importance to be to know about this, I would have to say, in order to lead a spiritual life. If you are just living your life as an Orthodox Christian, you're going to church, you're developing your prayer life, most essentially. You're struggling with the passions, you're partaking of the mysteries. That is really the most important thing, and it's so you can be a Christian, you can be an Orthodox Christian and not be well informed about the calendar issue, and it's not going to be detrimental to your spiritual life. But if you want to be able to understand this, then watch the video to the end, so that you will be also to explain to other people about it. And I'm going to propose a thesis here at the end of my talk. I'm going to say that I think all Orthodox Christians should be on the same calendar. Now, which one is the calendar that we should be on? Should it be the old style or the new style? Which I haven't explained what that means yet, but I will get to it. Well, stick around to the end and I will tell you which calendar all of the Orthodox churches, what I think they should be on, and I'll explain why. Now, I should also say here before I get started at the beginning that I am not talking about the old calendarist movement specifically, which is something a little different, but that if you watch this video, this will help you to understand what the old calendarist movement is and how it got started and why it's there. So, to begin, let me define the terms of what we're talking about. First of all, in the Orthodox Church, we have something called the revised Julian calendar, and we have the Julian calendar. The revised is what I refer to as the new, what people often call it the new style. And the Julian calendar, just the plain old Julian calendar, is the old style. What is the Julian calendar? This is the calendar that was established by Julius Caesar in 45 BC. So he decided to he wanted to change the calendar that they were using in the Roman Empire at the time. And don't ask me what was before that. It was different. It was not exactly what we're using now. I guess they had 10 months or something before, but he switched it to the calendar that we're all familiar with. And that took effect on January 1st, 45 BC. And interesting side note, we have the month of July is actually named after Julius Caesar, who established this calendar. So there's an interesting factoid for you to know. And his calendar, is actually, it's not precisely the one that we're using today for civil, the civil calendar. It's not the one that we're all familiar with outside of church. So the Julian calendar has the length of a year in the Julian calendar is 365.25 days. And that is because we have the leap year every fourth year. And so the problem that arose with this is that an actual solar year, a solar year being one rotation of the Earth around the sun, according to the astronomers, that's how they understand it. And the solar year is actually 365.24219 days currently. So it's a little teeny bit shorter than 365.25. And so what we had happen was the calendar was drifting. It was drifting away slowly. So over a course of 1,000 years, there were 7 days added to basically, the calendar was no longer being aligned with the solar equinox and the spring equinox which is the first day of spring, which is usually March 21st, right? So every 128 years, 1 day was added to the calendar. And what happened was the Pope, the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, he didn't like this. And so he decided to address this drift. He wanted the calendar to be pegged to the spring, to the equinoxes. He wanted it to be more astronomically accurate. And so he proposed a new calendar. And this was Pope Gregory the 13th. And he created a calendar which we call the Gregorian calendar, which is the calendar that we use today. It's the civil calendar, the one that everyone was familiar with growing up. And it's a little bit different than the Julian calendar. So in the Gregorian calendar, there is a leap year every fourth year, except centurial years, which means the years like 100 that are divisible by 100. So they on centurial years, there's only a leap year if it's divisible by 4. So every 400 years, there would be 3 fewer leap years than in the Julian calendar. And this is a little bit closer to the solar year. It's 365.2425 days long. So it's not precisely accurate. There's still a little bit of drift in the Gregorian calendar, but it's closer to the solar year. So the Pope instituted this in 1582, and on the date October 4th, 1582, it was a Thursday. The next day, it was followed by October 15th. We just skipped over 10 days, and they started this new calendar. So that would be an interesting thing to live through. The next day was Friday, October 15th. So we went from the 4th to the 15th. And that was what calendar, the Pope at that time, he had a lot of religious and political power, and he was able to institute it in all the countries that were Catholic, at the time. And then eventually, at the time, not everybody accepted it, but eventually all the European countries did accept it, and now basically worldwide, everybody's using the Gregorian calendar as their civil calendar. However, this is not the calendar that we actually that we use as the new style. The new style is that the new calendar in the Orthodox Church is not actually the Gregorian calendar. It's the new Julian calendar, the new style Julian calendar, the revised one. So what happened was, well, I'm actually going to get to that soon, how that came about. Because the Orthodox Church didn't accept this Gregorian calendar. They kept using the Julian calendar until the 20th century, which is what I'm going to start talking about now. How it came about that some of the Orthodox churches started basing some of the church calendar based on the Gregorian calendar, but not exactly, and I'll explain that why. Now, also as a background, I have to say, we've talked about the First Ecumenical Council here on this channel before, how it is, it was, one of the main things that the First Ecumenical Council was talking about was the heresy of Arianism. But there was also another problem that they were talking about at the First Ecumenical Council, and that was the celebration of the date of Pascha. So in the early church, not everybody was celebrating Pascha on the same date. Some were using some were Judaizers, and they were using they were actually celebrating on Passover, the Jewish Passover. Others were actually calculating the date of Pascha off of the Passover. So they would actually, some people in, I guess this was in Antioch, they were actually going and finding out what the Jewish Passover was going to be, and then the next day they would celebrate after the Passover. They would celebrate Pascha. So they would have to go to the local rabbi and ask him when they were going to celebrate Passover, and then they would set the date of Pascha after Passover, which seems a little odd, right? To go to a Jewish rabbi and ask when we Christians should be celebrating Pascha. That didn't seem right, does it? It doesn't sit well, because I guess the rabbis were like basing they were using their lunar calendar and basing the date off of like the first grain of barley that sprouted in the spring or something. Kind of awkward, kind of weird. So at the First Ecumenical Council, one of the things that was established, besides, part of the creed, was the Paschalion. And the Paschalion is the day which how you calculate the date of Easter. This was very important. So the date of Easter they decided it's not based on Passover. We're no longer associating ourselves with the Jewish accounting of Passover. What we're doing is we're going to celebrate Easter on the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. And they made a decree that anybody who does not follow the Orthodox Paschalion, are excommunicated. Very strong language. And so this is going to come back around. This is important to know when we get to talking about this new revised calendar. Hello to everybody in the chat. Thank you for being here with me. Okay, so let's jump forward to the 20th century. How did it happen? Where did this new revised calendar come from? So as you may know, at the early 20th century, there was a lot of talk, like after the First World War, people started talking about, let's have unity in the world, let's have oneness. And there was an ecumenical movement afoot. Okay. And so a lot of churches were starting to get together and talk to each other. Let's have unity. Of course, now Orthodox position is there are no other, there's only one church. So, if you want unity, our message to the other churches, which aren't really churches, but bodies of people who call themselves Christians, if you want to have unity, you're welcome to join the Orthodox Church. That's our position. Now, we have to introduce a character here at this moment. And this person is named Meletios Metexakis. And this was a Orthodox Christian who became a bishop. And he was the person pretty much who was responsible for instituting this new calendar, which started to cause so much problems in the church. So he was educated at a seminary, Holy Cross Seminary in the Holy Land, and then he got kicked out. He got kicked out for causing division. I think he was causing schism or something. He was causing problems in the Holy Land, and then he got kicked out. And then, but somehow, I don't know how, but they say it was uncanonically, but eventually later on, he got elected as a bishop in Greece. And then he got deposed from being a bishop in Greece. And this character, Meletios Metexakis, was a Freemason and an ecumenist. So he had actually traveled to the United States and England, and he was meeting up with Anglicans and Episcopals, and he was trying to finagle a way for there to be this unity. That he was an ecumenist. He was trying to he wanted the church, all the churches to have unity, is what he said. And he was also a modernist. And I don't know if this guy even was a believer, honestly, for him to be, because an Orthodox Christians can't, he was a Mason, I said, right? Didn't I tell you that? And Orthodox Christians can't be Masons. And they can't be ecumenists either. But somehow, this guy who had somehow gotten to become a bishop in Greece, then got kicked out, and then he got elected to be patriarch of Constantinople. And how did that happen? Well, he actually didn't get elected at first. They held an election, and another bishop was chosen, 16-1. But that bishop was offered, 3 men came to him. And these were some businessmen. We don't know exactly who they were. Some businessmen, some probably some Masons who were, hooked up politically. And they offered this person who had been elected bishop, they offered him $100,000 to step down so that Meletius could become the patriarch. And he had an error of judgment, this bishop. He accepted the $100,000 because the church in Constantinople was in a very poor position financially. So he stepped down, and Meletius became the patriarch of Constantinople. And does this sound familiar, by the way? Because a lot of people may know I don't know if this is confirmed, but it has been posited that this is a similar thing that has been happening today. We have the Patriarch Bartholomew in Constantinople apparently was given millions of dollars from the U.S. State Department, is what we hear. And when whoever gives you the money, you're kind of beholden to them. And then later he goes and he starts causing a lot of trouble in Ukraine. So there seems to be a pattern forming here with this patriarch of Constantinople. So he is now the patriarch, and he holds this meeting. He calls it the Pan-Orthodox Congress, quote unquote, and which is held from May to June 1923. And I don't know how they can call this a Pan-Orthodox Congress, because there were only 9 people there attending the meetings, six bishops, 1 archimandrite, and 2 laymen. But somehow, they call it a Pan-Orthodox Congress, and they push through this, what they call a revised Julian calendar. Now, at the Congress, they wanted to do a lot more. I think Meletius actually originally wanted to go whole hog into the Gregorian calendar. But because remember we talked about the First Ecumenical Council with the decree that you're excommunicated if you don't celebrate Orthodox Pascha. So he was not able to convince people to change the Paschalian. So instead, he adopts the Gregorian calendar for the fixed feast, the fixed calendar for the church, and he keeps the Orthodox Paschalian, and he pushes it through, and he convinces some churches to adopt it, and some churches he's not able to convince. And so we have this kind of a division. It's a cause of disunity in the church because it's a loss of liturgical unity. Because no longer are all the churches in the world celebrating on the cycle of services on the same day. And so this is what is the most lamentable thing about this that happened, is that it destroyed the liturgical unity of the church. And now there are also some other changes that he wanted to push through. He wanted to, for example, to have Patriarch Meletius was talking about having married episcopacy, so bishops were going to get married. He wanted to allow priests to cut their hair and their beards and have second marriages, allow priests to get married after ordination. He wanted to change the celebration of feasts, and there was a whole bunch of modernists, change. He wanted to modernize the church. He didn't get all that he wanted, but he did get the calendar pushed through. And so why did he want to do all this? He wanted unity. He was an ecumenist. So what I'm saying is that the root of all this was modernism and ecumenism. And so I'm saying that, that if the root is rotten, if the motivation for this change is not good, then the fruits are not going to be good. And that's exactly what has turned out. So in Romans chapter 11, it says, let me find here. Bear with me. I should have written down the exact. If the root is holy, basically if the root is holy, then so are the branches, basically. I can't find it exactly. I'm here trying to live stream and find it at the same time. Oh, here it is. Romans 11:16. If the root be holy, so are the branches. Okay, so if the root was holy, the branches would be holy. But in this case, the root is rotten. The reason that he wanted to make these changes was he wanted to modernize the church, and he wanted it to be, and he was an ecumenist. That was basically the main motivation for this. So if the root is rotten, so is the branches, and that's what ended up happening. That's how it turned out. So what is the problem here? Besides, so it's causing division. We can't celebrate together. Like a priest, if he celebrates a liturgy and he's celebrating a particular saint or a feast one day, and then he wants to go celebrate with his brother priest across town the next day, he can't do it because he can't take communion for the same commemoration twice. So if a priest wants to celebrate with another priest, it only can happen on the movable feasts, which are tied to the date of Pascha. And so there's many reasons why this new calendar is inferior to the old calendar. And some of those reasons, I'll go through them. It displaces many feasts. Some feasts don't always fall where they're supposed to. So, for example, the feast of the 40 Holy Martyrs of Sebaste is supposed to fall in Lent, but sometimes on the new calendar it falls on Cheese Fair or Meat Fair. It makes Kyrio Pascha impossible, which is the celebration of it's the Annunciation, I believe, and Pascha on the same day. And another problem is the Apostles' Fast, which is a very important fast, as one of the great fasts of the year, is either abbreviated or completely eliminated. So the only thing good about this, if you could say it's good, if you wanted to find something good about this change, about this new revised calendar, the only thing good you could maybe find about it is that it's a little more convenient to have the same dates as the civil calendar. It's just not as much of a headache. You don't have to count the 13 days or whatever. But I don't think that says much. Like, when have the Orthodox ever done anything to conform to the world, to make things easier? I might add that, convenience, everybody knows that the way that the Antichrist is going to take over and rule the world is through convenience. So just because something is easier doesn't mean it's a good idea. So I think you can tell what I'm going to say here for my thesis. I am going to propose that all Orthodox Christians should be on the same calendar, and that calendar should be the old calendar. Let's go back. Let's have everybody repent. It's not your fault necessarily. It was other people made this decision many years ago. But let's repent. Let's go back. Let's all get on the same calendar, because there's really nothing good coming from this. And that is my answer to the calendar question. What should be done about it? We should all go back to the old calendar. Let's see, what is this? We have a comment. Oh, joke. Okay. Oh, David's on the old calendar too. Oh, also, yeah, everybody knows that also, like before I started researching this, I had like this vague idea, the old calendar is good because it's more traditional, I guess, it's based, I don't know. I guess if you go to like a parish and, it can for example, some OCA parishes are on the old calendar, some are on the new. And if it's on the old calendar, that kind of tells you something, that this church is more likely to be a traditional calendar, or a traditional church. Let's see. I think I've kind of gone through everything that I wanted to say here today. Thank you to David Treebeard for giving me the idea for today's stream. I took my last day off. I didn't stream 5 days ago because I wasn't quite prepared, and I've been doing this once every 5th day for so long. I didn't think I needed a rest, but I don't know, maybe I might be changing my schedule. Maybe it's not going to be every 5th day anymore. Maybe I might try to settle in some once every 7th day, or maybe when I'm ready. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, that fair point, that there are some based new calendar parishes. I guess it is entirely dependent, you take this kind of thing on a parish by parish basis. And this is not Abbot Trifon has written in his blog that this is not a dogmatic issue. So it's not a reason for schism. There is an old calendarist movement. They thought that this was a reason to go into schism, and they said everyone who's not on the old calendar is not Orthodox, they said, and we're the only Orthodox, and it's just pride, and it's not a dogmatic issue, so it's not like a heresy, although some people said at the time that in essence it is a schismatic move to go to the new calendar. That's what people were saying at the time. Here's a quote. I have a quote from this book. Here's a pamphlet that I used to prepare for this stream, the Orthodox Church calendar, which is put out by Jordanville. And there's a quote in here I want to read from Metropolitan Anthony, who was the first Krapovitsky, who was the first he was the first hierarch of the first hierarch of the Russian Church abroad, and he says, the calendar reform cannot be accepted by the Russian Church inasmuch as it contradicts the holy canons and ancient tradition of church practice, sanctified by the ecumenical councils. And so, he is kind of an authority. People think he was a saint, and you should be listening to what he says. I might talk about him in a future stream. But I'm glad that I went through and did all this research, because before I was not educated on this issue. I didn't really have a full, complete understanding of why we want to be on the old calendar. So I'm glad I'm doing this whole streaming thing, because it forces me to go and read and research and form a correct opinion, and I'm getting a free education here. So, was there anything else I wanted to go over? Because I might end the stream here. So please subscribe, hit the like button for me, subscribe to my channel. If you hit that little bell, you hit the bell, then you'll get a notification when you go onto YouTube. You'll get a little red notification when I'm going live or when I've dropped a new video. So if you want to follow me more closely, you can subscribe and hit the bell button. And then maybe if you want to, be notified when I go live, and you want to be here live, which can be fun. Okay, thank you. Okay, so, well, thanks again for watching my stream, and that's it for today. Thanks to everybody who's in the chat watching live, and we'll see you guys all next time.